Was the trip down to Florida really worth it? And was it really worth 5 days of my life? Let's chat. Welcome to the Automation Mastery Podcast. This is your host, Justin Morgan of automationmastery.net, here to help you automate your business, master your destiny, and maximize your impact. Let's get to the episode. Let's chat. What's up, everybody? Feels good to be back and recording another episode here of the podcast. Getting back into content season, so I'm excited to report some new content, some new things that have been going down, and really what I've been up to. And as you've heard from the intro, there was an event. Now there was a conference. Let's call it a conference. It was a training that went down in South Florida, down in Fort Lauderdale, with the guy by the name of Andy Henriquez. I've heard him speak quite a few times over the years, and one of his big things is stories. He's big on telling stories, and over the years I've checked out some of his videos on YouTube. Again, I've run into some of the events. I see him on Facebook, and his content's always really good. I've enjoyed it, and I'd say that he definitely does tell some great stories, some ones that I felt were fairly memorable. And even at the events, there's times where he told some stories that just brought the room down, and which is really adding to his resume. He has a viral Goldcast video now that's over 3 million views. So hats off to him on that. But what I really want to dive into is the Master Storyteller Academy. Now, this is the event that he does 2 or 3 times a year, as far as I understand. And it's really his big thing, right? So it's his big event where he teaches you how to work on your signature story. Now, you're all like, well, what's a signature story, Justin? Oh, so let me inform you. Okay. So understand that, I work in this space where a lot of our income comes from us communicating, right? On platforms like this, we usually use stories, right? So there's some story that leads to your origin, right? It leads to telling someone about you, what you do, and why they should listen to you. And a signature story is something that's meant to leave a strong impression on someone. And that story is your story. And he has gotten very good at telling his signature story. You really should go check that out. If you don't check out anything else, at least check out his signature story. Just Google "Show Up for Your Life," Andy Henriquez. I'll also put a link to his Storyteller Academy in the show notes. If I can find that other video on the Goldcast one, I'll include that as well. At the end of the day, the signature story is supposed to be the important story. Now, what the whole point of this 3-day workshop, again, the Master Storyteller Academy, is for you to work on that one story and that story alone. Now, if you are a professional speaker, this is perfect because you will need a signature story. It's a very powerful thing. If you're in any other industry, so I guess I'm trying to get into the takeaways. Let me reverse. Okay, so I want to give y'all kind of the objective of the event, how the event goes, and then kind of the takeaways based off of where you are in your career and what you need and your resources, et cetera, et cetera. First off, the event's not cheap. So, I think it went around a couple grand. So, it just kind of depends on where you are financially and what time of the year you're catching them at. Again, I can't speak to where his prices will be in the future or they are at all times, but I know it's not cheap. It's definitely an upfront investment to it. And then your next question will be whether it's worth it. I'll answer that as we continue on here. But it's a 3-day event. And there's plenty of exercises, so you actually go in and you work on your story. So there's actually active time where you are developing and practicing your signature story. I won't go into all of the instruction and all the exercises because I think some of that stuff you should be surprised and blindsided by. So that way you do know. But as you expect, if you're going to be working on your signature story, expect to actually practice your story. The event isn't meant to be humongous. It's meant to be in a very close knit segment. So in our particular session, there was about 30 some folks in the room, which is enough. It's actually pretty good because it allows for enough time for everybody to get to know one another. Yet it's not like two people in a room, right? So it actually is a good crowd there. The team that he has with them, they're good folks. Got to speak to most of them for more than just a second. And so hearing all their stories was amazing. And oftentimes, the product that's put out, the team that you have and the alumni that go through that also usually reflect the quality of your product. And so I would say that the people that I met were really good people, seemed down to earth. I know some of the times you go to some of these programs and people kind of get there and they feel very planted, right? Like they feel like they're just there to just kind of say, hey, this is how great it is. I didn't get that feel. I felt like they were there because they legitimately had a love for what was going on. And they were there to support the event, support us, support Andy because of what they've done for them. And yeah, so I would say no negatives there. Obviously, I'm pretty straightforward with these. If I had to get a criticism anywhere, I mean, there are definitely some spaces where maybe we could have done some more exercises, some more practice. At the same time, though, I say that now, but there was at least an evening or two where I tried to do more practice in the evening, but I had pretty much zero voice left. Like I'd got back and my voice started to not like me very much. And so I kind of reached that limit. So we do plenty of yelling and shouting and talking at the event. And so maybe the level of practice was appropriate because at the end of the day, kind of getting to the end result for me personally, so getting a chance to work on that signature story is my story came out much better. Like if the goal was to work on just that one signature story alone and get better at it, that was achieved. Now, most of the practice is done on an abbreviated version of the story, which is really what you need. Okay. So if you're used to practicing a 20-minute long story, make sure you are ready to make that more efficient. That's all I will say. I won't tell you exactly how long, but make it more efficient, right? And it's done very well. What I will say is, I checked in with my wife one of the nights, and she asked me to do the story with her over the phone, and I did it in the more efficient time. And she's heard the story before, and when I was done, she asked me, she was like, that was shorter? You got everything in. It was like the same story. Well, it was indeed much shorter, but I got in all the important parts of the story, right? And so I did much better at telling it, which is actually one of the challenges for me when I'm presenting. So I've failed most times to tell that story in an efficient time frame. So I'm glad that I was able to do that. That's the one piece. So if I just had to grade it off of that, I would definitely give it an A. Definitely was able to hammer down my signature story. Now I know for some folks, they may have got to the end and maybe they didn't have it. I've been speaking for quite some time. I've been trying to work on this story for quite some time. I had a bit of a head start, so to speak. So I've been at it for a little bit. So maybe that's why I felt like I got to a good place at the end of it. I know some folks are still trying to craft their deal. And there's definitely still some changes and tweaks I'll make to my story. But definitely that was powerful. The other big takeaway was the widening of my perspective of how to craft the story. Certainly, that is a tool in my toolbox now that I will be using for now on. I hope I will tell better stories. I know this is more of a review, so I didn't really craft it as a story, but I would have had I thought about doing it that way. But so that at the end of the day, that was one huge takeaway I took from this, was that it expanded. I'm thinking about other stories and other things and changes I can make to them, and it got me excited again about crafting presentations, crafting speeches, crafting content, because I realized the impact that those things can have. So that's the second part. Now I know contextually, y'all so was it worth it? Was it worth the money? Was it worth the travel? And in my opinion, it was, right? Like I would not, so there was it's crazy, right? Because I was on the phone with a client, actually, funny enough. prior to me getting to the event. And they're like, Justin, they need me to do something. I said, well, I'm traveling, going down to Florida. They said, oh, you're going to, I said, where are you going? I'm going to Andy's event. And I'm like, oh, Andy's event? Yeah. And they say, you don't need to go to that. And I'm like, oh, I didn't say anything. I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to go check it out and enjoy it. But in my mind, I'm saying, who's to tell you what I need? Right? Who are you to tell me what I need? Right? I know they meant no malice by it. And frankly, I think it's more of a nod at how good they thought I was. But one of the biggest reasons I wanted to come to this, and I think everyone should, if you have the opportunity, the time, and the budget, is one, you get to focus, right? So you get to actually take time and focus on crafting your story. I've spent so much time serving other entrepreneurs, helping them record their stories, that I haven't really spent time on mine. And so I think just that isolated time away from the family, bless them for allowing me to get that time, was just powerful. Just in that one piece, being there, and then being around other people who are also working on the same thing, that is also worth the price of admission. And I don't care what industry you're in. And I actually had a conversation with one of the folks there, and they were talking about how they weren't sure how they were going to use this. And I kind of had to break it down like, hey, we use stories all the time. And sometimes it doesn't have to be to speak into large stages. It can be in one-on-one sales pitches. It can be you just convincing or changing the mind of someone. Stories are often powerful in that process. And Andy also gives plenty of examples of that as well. So no matter where you are, so I don't care if I know some folks will be like, well, if I don't speak, if I'm not a professional speaker, why do I need this? And I would say that I think that any person that needs to tell a story, i.e. all of us, should take advantage of this. So if you speak at all in your profession, if you write at all in your profession, if you communicate with other human beings that know your language, this is for you. So that's my consistency. If I had to get it a rating, I would definitely give it an A minus, B plus. Yes, there's some opportunities from other things that happen there. Again, in terms of maybe doing a little more training, there was some mindset work, which I've realized some folks really needed. I don't know that I needed it so much. So I guess from my personal perspective, I give it that. But for some folks, depending on where you are in your career, I think it's very, very much needed. And for you, I definitely would put it in that A minus range in terms of how I'd rate the event itself. So Andy, if you are listening to this entire thing, or the team, the A minus or B plus is not a knock on you all in terms of the effort you put in, because I truly, and again, I say this, and part of the reason I really was excited to go to this is, I've heard Andy speak for years, and I've had a chance to actually speak to him, just one-on-one for a few minutes here and there. But every time I interact with him, whether it's just him or his wife, they're always amazing. And they always have something just amazing to say. They're always friendly, and their energy, right? Sometimes it's just about energy. And I always get a feeling of a certain type of energy from him. And that's why I entrusted, I trusted him and his team with my time and my money on this past weekend. And I truly am grateful for it. So y'all should check it out. Again, the info is in the show notes. Okay, so that's my review on this one. It's a little bit long, but I think it was worth it in terms of outlining everything from this experience. So MSA, to my MSA crew, I appreciate you and all that you do. I appreciate all my listeners here in Automation Nation. Again, make sure you automate your business, you master your destiny, and you master your impact. I'll see you in the next episode. And as usual, treat each day as a building block to a better future. Peace.